The Forsaken Wife by Elizabeth Thomas, who wrote under the pen name Corinna, was first published in 1722 in the collection Miscellany Poems on Several Subjects. Born in 1675, Thomas was an English poet and letter writer who spent most of her life in a state of genteel poverty due to the fact that her father had died when she was only 2, leaving her to be brought up by her now single 18-year-old mother. Her financial struggles were such that she even spent 3 years near the end of her life in a debtor's prison, dying shortly after her release. In the poem, the speaker apostrophizes her absent husband, who has cruelly abandoned her without even a word of goodbye. She expresses her grief and anger that he has been unfaithful to her, but in spite of this, she asserts that she will not seek retribution by engaging in the same behaviour as him, because all that will achieve is to debase her. She has come to believe that men love in an inferior way to women, because they lack the moral fibre and courage to suffer and remain loyal through thick and thin. As a result, she will hold on to her pride and principles and will take solace from the fact that remaining faithful to him and suffering in silence, as only a woman can, will make her an infinitely better person. Although Thomas suffered from romantic disappointment and grief in her life, she was never abandoned by a husband or loved one in the way that the speaker in the poem is, and so we cannot assume that she is speaking from personal experience. Engaged for 16 years, she and her fiancé, Richard Gwinnett, were not able to marry due to financial difficulties. When he did eventually come into an inheritance which would have enabled them to tie the knot, he died shortly after of consumption, otherwise known as tuberculosis, in 1717, before they could do so. She remained unmarried until her death in 1731. The inspiration for the poem is most likely to have come from her interest more generally in women's issues at a time when they had very few rights set down in law. Even though she was particularly interested in their right to education, the fact that women at this time had few legal rights with regard to their marriage would also have been a bone of contention for her. Regarded as their husband's property, women had no power to file for divorce if they were unhappy in a marriage or if their husband had been unfaithful, as in the case of the Forsaken Wife. The woman was effectively trapped, and if she tried to leave, she was considered mad and could even be confined to an asylum. Unable to legally free herself, she would be unable to subsequently have a respectable relationship with another man because she was still married. Anne McWhirr, in her article in the English Literary History Journal, Elizabeth Thomas and the Two Corinnas, Giving the Woman Writer a Bad Name, describes her poetry as often witty and lively, with sharp satiric insights into the social predicament of women. The poem comprises 3 stanzas of 4, 8, and 8 lines respectively. It has a bass meter of iambic tetrameter, di-dum, 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 to which Thomas rigidly adheres throughout. Most lines are end-stopped, with only 2 examples of enjambment, one in the first stanza and one in the third. There are, however, a number of examples of caesura. The effect that this has is one of control, which enhances the tone of rigid self-discipline and composure that the speaker maintains throughout, as though she is weighing her words carefully so as not to let her emotions run away with her. In tune with this, the rhyme scheme is also tightly controlled, featuring as it does rhyming couplets, and so follows an A, B, B, C, C, etc. pattern throughout. Note that one rhyme in each stanza, i.e. afford and word, shows and vows, and unheard and regard, are I rhymes. In other words, they look as though they should fully rhyme, but only actually share a half rhyme. These examples all may be as a result of what was known as the Great Vowel Shift, which occurred in the English language during the 15th, 16th and 17th centuries, when the pronunciation of English vowels underwent massive changes. For example, unheard would have been pronounced unhard, to rhyme with regard at the time Thomas was writing. With modern pronunciation, however, where this occurs, it does add an extra note of discordancy to the poem and enhances the internal conflict and grief that the speaker is suffering. Thomas's diction is straightforward, and she makes no use of figurative language, such as simile or metaphor, at all. The register of her language is formal in both vocabulary and syntax. She uses a number of archaic words, such as methinks, which means it seems to me, not I think, and morga, which means in spite of, while a number of the poetic lines also feature anastrophe, i.e. an inversion of the normal order of the words in a phrase or sentence, such as, your infidelity I find, instead of I find your infidelity, and I yet superior am to you, instead of I am yet superior to you, which also sounds archaic, but which serves to add emphasis to particular words and phrases. Thomas does exploit some sound patterning techniques, such as alliteration and internal rhyme, e.g. pitying and parting, and repetition, such as my broken heart, your broken vows, some of which is polyptotonic. Show me a man that dare be true, that dares to suffer what I do. Although overall her approach is unvarnished and to the point. The title, The Forsaken Wife, refers to the poem's speaker in the third person and indicates right from the start that the poet and the speaker are not to be confused. The adjective forsaken means abandoned or deserted, and so indicates to the reader before they have even started reading the perspective from which the poem has been written. The poem begins, methinks 'tis strange you can't afford one pitying look, one parting word. It would seem that the speaker's husband has coldly abandoned her without even saying goodbye. The archaic word methinks is often confused for a variant of I think, but this is not actually the case. Instead, it comes from the Old English verb thinken, to seem, and so means it seems to me. The verb afford not only means provide, but also have enough resources for, and it seems that this word has been chosen deliberately for its two meanings. Note how the speaker uses parallel syntax here. One pitying look, one parting word. The repetition of one, the plosive alliteration of the p sound, and internal rhyme in pitying and parting, and the caesura, all underlining the relative smallness of both these gestures, and that common decency costs nothing and can therefore be afforded by everyone. The way she describes this oversight as strange suggests more than a little sarcasm in her tone, as she tells him that, considering that she is his wife, this wouldn't have been too much to ask for. Indeed, she says, humanity or compassion and empathy claims this as due. Note the adjective due here to suggest that he has broken a moral contract and is in debt to her, which links back to the verb afford in line 1, even though she knows that she is powerless in terms of the legal contract that they made together. She finishes the stanza on a bitter rhetorical question. But what's humanity to you? In other words, she is not surprised after all, because he clearly has not even a shred of common decency. The second stanza begins on the exclamation, cruel man, its shortness and the caesura which is created, emphasising the depth of pain that his vicious behaviour has caused her. I am not blind, your infidelity I find. In other words, he hasn't even bothered to hide the fact that he's having an affair with another woman. And the scorn that she feels, that he would even think that he would not be found out, is evident in her voice. She now spells out his crime and its devastating consequences quite plainly. Your want or lack of love my ruin shows. The absence of his love for her that has been proved by his behaviour has brought about her ruin or downfall. There is nothing she can do, as legally she is powerless. The parallel syntax of my broken heart, your broken vows, with its repetition of broken definitively links the contempt he has shown for his marriage vows to her current pain. Note how the I-rhyme here of shows and vows creates a note of discordancy for the modern reader. Yet, she says, maugre, or despite, all your rigid hate, I will be true, in spite of fate. She will be loyal to their marriage vows, even though she knows that he won't come back to her, as his loathing for her is fixed. Moreover, there is one preeminence I'll claim, which is to be forever still the same. In other words, even though she is ruined, she can claim to be superior in one way. She will always stay faithful, even if he won't. The third stanza begins on an imperative. Show me a man that dare be true, that dares to suffer what I do. As she throws down the gauntlet to anyone who can produce a man that has the courage not only to be loyal, but to endure the pain that she has had to. Not only does she see her husband as a coward, but this experience has led her to tar all men with the same brush, and to come to the conclusion that women love in a qualitatively different way to men. She can't imagine that any man could forever sigh unheard and ever love without regard, or would have the moral fibre or emotional strength to do what she has to cry alone and unnoticed, and to love without a hope of it once more being returned. Note the repetition of ever in these lines to emphasise that she has effectively been condemned to a life sentence of suffering. If such a man, however, can be found, then she will own or acknowledge your prior claim to love, to honour and to fame. In other words, until such a man is found, she will deny that he is capable of feeling love or of acting honourably towards a woman, or is deserving of a good reputation. She's not, however, holding her breath that this will happen, and so she takes her leave of him. But till that time, my dear, adieu. I yet superior am to you. It's not clear whether the normally affectionate term of address, my dear, is meant sincerely in this context, because she does state that she still loves him despite his behaviour, or whether she is being bitterly sarcastic. What is clear, however, is that in her parting shot to him, she shows that she is proud of the moral high ground that being a female has allowed her to take. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos on English language topics and exam techniques, and English literature texts.